Hello and welcome to a Monday after the Masters edition of the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. I'm Pat Burnham. I'm joined today by Osceola editor Bob Ferrante. Bob, how's it going?
Doing great. Enjoyed the weekend, a little bit of downtime, but good weekend for Florida State baseball. Yeah,
FSU gets off a 3-game losing streak by starting a 3-game winning streak in Virginia Tech over the weekend. We'll talk a little bit about that. We didn't get to see a lot of it because it was not on television outside of Sunday, and I think that might have even been ESPN Plus. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it was ACC Network or not. Kind of a slow weekend on the football front, and I think everybody, the football staff, our staff, the football players, are all glad to see a Saturday free. Not a whole lot going on, not a whole lot on the recruiting front either. And Nick will join us on Wednesday to talk a little bit about that. Not necessarily a slow day. We're going to talk a little bit about what Mike Norvell said after Friday's goal line and short yardage scrimmage or practice. They're not calling it a scrimmage, but they did go 11 on 11, except for the quarterbacks were not live. We'll talk a little bit about that. But we do have some breaking news. As most people know, the portal opens up at 12:01 a.m. on April 16th. It'll be a nice 10-day window. FSU's already starting to see a little action. Of course, what's got everybody talking really is what's going on in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a few minutes. But their quarterback, as everyone famously knows now, Nico Amalivia, I think that's how, or I'm gonna leave you is now his last name, has basically officially, well, not unofficially, parted ways with Tennessee. Josh Heupel, after reports on Thursday surfaced that his quarterback was looking for $4 million, did not show up for practice on Friday, and essentially Josh Heupel cut him from the football team. Said he would not be moving forward with Nico, and that's out. That's a strange circumstance. I knew we said there'd be these unforeseen things happen with the portal and NIL, and this is the first ever college holdout. Now what we'll have is who's going to hold in. Well, everybody's holding in, right? I mean, that's in theory. But Florida State has seen 2 players announce their intention to enter the portal on Wednesday, and that one of them is quarterback Trevor Jackson. Trevor didn't play last year, Bob. We did not see him in the scrimmage that we saw last 2 Saturdays ago. And, I said last week that, the only player I could, for sure see and leave would be Trevor, because Gus has not mentioned him. He is a kid with some talent, can spin it. Obviously, he may be suited for a pass-first offense with his arm talent, even though he can run. But Trevor was the first one. Obviously, what was your take on that? I mean, I had a very limited take on Friday simply because we've never seen him play in a game. Very little impact from one year to the next with losing him, but certainly a kid that showed promise.
Yeah, Trevor Jackson is a guy, we saw him practice with the scout team last fall, so that's really the extent of how we've seen him, is where he's trying to mimic other quarterbacks. And really, when you look at him as a passer, I think you have to give him an incomplete grade. We haven't seen him with Florida State's best receivers yet. We didn't see him with the 1s or the 2s. So what can he do with an offense is really, again, incomplete. Pat, I'll say this, though. If you're looking at depth charts, and every quarterback is this time of year, right?
Yep.
Can he go MAC? Can he go Sun Belt? I think the answer is yes. I'm not saying he can start in the fall, having missed a spring already, but I think that's a guy you stash and grab for 2026. If you are, say, a group of 5 coach, you say that's talent. That's a guy I can develop I'm not saying he can't play power four, but
No.
at this point, we don't know. But I think he can play group of five level. And there's a lot of coaches out there looking for gems in late April. And I think that's a potential gem. You have to polish a little bit, but that's a potential gem.
Yeah, to me, he's a kid. He's going to be a redshirt freshman wherever he transfers. He could end up at a group of five, and it would not surprise me if 2 years we're watching him transfer back into a Power Four program, because he does have a legit major college football arm. And again, I think at the end of the day, this was a offensive system fit type thing for Trevor. And also, we've heard them rave about Kevin Sperry. So it's almost like Kevin has surpassed Trevor in 12 practices. And listen, let's face it, Kevin was a Gus Malzahn guy. Trevor was not. Anyway, interesting there. No real, don't think it hurts your depth at quarterback, obviously, because you've got three in front of him. But listen, Trevor, we wish him the best of luck. Seemed like a great kid in what limited time we had around him. And certainly he was a kid that, to get him on campus as a preferred walk-on was, worth the while for Florida State to see if he could develop into something. And we'll see what happens to him. Now, the one guy that I do think could have an impact on Florida State next year, and I had him listed as the second-team right tackle in our pre-spring offensive depth chart, and that's Jalen Early. Who's a redshirt junior, Bob. This is a kid that started 6 games last year for Florida State. One of my takeaways coming out of the scrimmage we got to see, and obviously we did not see a lot of the first line. We didn't see 3 of the what I projected starters on offensive line. But long story short, Bob, I don't know how. I don't know about the depth of this offensive line. We just haven't seen them enough. One of my takeaways coming out of that scrimmage that we did see with the lack of offensive explosives is that I do worry a little bit about depth across the board with this unit. Jalen, to me, was a guy that could have found himself in a battle for one of those 2 starting guard positions. Got to think the tackle and center positions are spoken for. So to me, this could, if Florida State is not able to stay healthy on the offensive line next year, this could be one of those. Now, listen, and we need to preface this. He has entered the portal. He has not left. I don't my sense of things is if Mike's not going to play this game, once you're in the portal, go ahead and go, right? That seems to be either you got both feet in the boat or you got both feet out and you're swimming. But, yeah, I think to me this is the one so far out of the 2 that, I was like, well, I could see him developing into a starter at guard down the line. And 2, I think he was definitely going to give you – he's one of the few guys that I had listed as a backup. I think of all the returning offensive linemen, I think he played second most. I'm talking about Florida State's returning offensive linemen. So just your thoughts on Jalen Early potentially leaving the program, I guess we should say.
I think reading the tea leaves, it's either he knows he's not going to start, it's not fitting from a personality standpoint with him and Herb Hand, or he thinks there's a better offer out there financially for him at another program where he can start. I think Jalen Early, I'm not trying to play the count to 8 game, but when you think of injuries and you think of depth, you want a guy like Jalen Early.
Yep.
So I'll say this. If he is the biggest loss that Florida State has coming out of this post-spring portal, that's a big one, but I think you almost survive it to some extent.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens 11, 12 days down the road. But I think Jalen's a guy who could compete for playing time, could find some playing time. He may just feel like that path to the starting job is not quite there. It's a name we haven't heard at all, honestly, from the coaching staff this spring. Not saying that's a negative. It's just a name that hasn't popped up because we've heard Luke Pettibon being remarkable. We've heard Adrian Medley as far as a guy bringing in the Herb Hand philosophy, the Gus Malzahn philosophy. We know Micah Pettis is back after being sidelined a little bit. Ferguson back, Richie Leonard in the mix. We just haven't heard, I don't think, anything honestly, about Jalen Early. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, listen, I'll say this to you. I think if TJ Ferguson can be a depth piece on this offensive line, Jalen could too. And listen, I think this is going to be kind of glossed over because he is a offensive lineman that was scheduled to be a backup based on our pre-spring depth chart. Now, listen, I think this is another fascinating part of this story. We don't know what it is. Was he not happy with being a reserve? Was he not happy with the coaching changes? Or was this simply that he sees how Mike has done things with the offensive line each of the last 3 years, which is go heavy into the portal to fill out your offensive line and not play the kids that have been recruited on this campus out of high school? We've seen a lot of that. I mean, we've got 4 of the 5 offensive linemen this year going into 2025 projected starters are transfers. You go back to last year, TJ Ferguson was a transfer. Byers was a transfer. I mean, just about everybody on that offensive line outside of Darius and Maurice that played were transfers. So I think maybe that's part of it. Maybe he just says, hey, they're going to do the same thing next year. I need to go find a home and play my 2 years. And, it's going to be interesting to see whether he ends up as a Power 4 or a Group of 5 program. And he is from Texas, so there's a chance he could head back home too. But listen, I think right now, I don't think it's one you worry about. But I do think if FSU does have a couple offensive linemen go down next year, you're going to be like, well, what is this offense would have been if they had better backups, right? So not really what we're considering a frontline player, but an important depth piece. You go back to the Nico thing, and I was thinking about this last night. Who would be the one guy from either side of the ball would have that kind of impact if they did leave unexpectedly last minute, which is kind of what Nico did. Of course, we've heard no rumblings of anybody really. I haven't anyway. Potentially leaving. Now, I do think there will be some kids leave simply because they will know how they fit into this new scheme on both sides of the ball and whether they have a future at Florida State. And we know the portal works both ways, right? So it could be that Mike and the staff are telling player A that, hey, it doesn't look great for you next year. You might want to consider transferring. And I think we have them over 105, right, Bob?
Yeah, and who knows where that roster cap's going to be because the House NCAA court case is still up in the air. The judge has said, well, maybe players should be grandfathered in as we're looking at 105 as the potential new scholarship number. So look, coaches don't even know going to this portal period on Wednesday, what is the scholarship limit going to be come August, right? I mean, we're in wild times from a roster management standpoint where coaches are trying to juggle all these different factors.
Yeah. Yeah, and listen, I think I do think there'll be a little bit of activity. I think the more interesting question on FSU and the portal is, do they bring anybody else in once they have these defections? And if they have, and we believe that they will, there will be some guys that'll try to find playing time other spots. But I think the more curious question is, will they bring in other kids through the portal into this program? And I'm just going to ask you, based off what you've heard and how Mike has talked and these coaches have talked about each position group, are there 2 or 3 position groups that if you were in charge of this roster, you'd say, hey, if we find a kid that's got either a starting caliber ability or the ability to be a backup who can carry a substantial amount and play a substantial amount of reps, where would you start looking if you're Florida State, just based off what the one practice we've seen with my eyes and Kurt's eyes and what we've heard from the staff?
I think the variables are, we don't know the scholarship limit. We don't know the NIL budget. I mean, we know the revenue share money that's going to come in. We know what most football schools are going to allocate. We do know some of that. I think I'm curious at tight end, Pat. I mean, honestly, with 4 tight ends, you're an injury away from being in a bad spot. Are you thinking about moving Amari Williams back when he's made such a great impression at defensive end? Or Jack, you don't want to do that. Maybe from a number standpoint, you're looking at tight end. I'm curious about defensive back still too. I mean, so many injuries there this spring. Shaheem Brown did come back. Conrad Hussey, I think if we were putting money in December, January, would Conrad be on this roster?
Yep.
August, opening up against Alabama, I think most of us would say Conrad would probably be at another school. You
Yes.
start to look at just depth chart, not just starters, but I mean truly like ones, twos. Okay, then who's ascending? I think you start to make questions at DB just until you start to see where those younger guys are. Yeah, again, Pat, you said it kind of earlier. More departures to be expected than arrivals, just from a number game standpoint. It's not just the scholarship limit; it's just the nature of that spring portal period. I think the most impactful guys we've seen come in the last few years. Let's just remind people: Keon Coleman, Dylan Gibbons, Jacob Rizzi. But it's very few in numbers. But there are some guys who can come in this late after spring ball and be impactful come fall.
Yeah. Listen, and some of this is going to be kids have had a good springs and feel like they've increased their value and the word's out. Some of it's going to be they're not getting enough snaps. Maybe they're a co-starter and they want to go. Maybe they just want to change after going through. Maybe they've had a coaching change on their staff and go. So there could be a number of reasons why they end up going after kids in the portal. I think there's a couple situations, and we kind of talked about it last week. The first two positions that come to my mind that could use that addition in the portal are tight end. Listen, I still don't think you have a all-purpose tight end. I think you've got guys that can do one thing well, and they struggle to do the other thing well. Pittman's a receiver. He's not going to be a great blocker. Marquison's probably better blocking than he is at receiving. Chase Lofton is probably a better receiver at this point in his development because he's an early enrollee freshman than he is a blocker. Now, Landon Thomas, to me, is the kid that could, if he puts on another 7 to 15 pounds, which would get him to around 240. Now, could he be an in-the-unit blocker that's also effective as a tight end? So, I had this discussion the other night with somebody. Somebody said, well, I said they need to get another tight end. They never have been able to recruit an all-purpose tight end. And he goes, well, that Gus Malzahn's only been here for 3 months. You got to give him time. Well, no, the tight end position in Mike's offense is very similar to Gus's offense. So this is they just have not done a great job of getting a full functioning tight end who can play on first down and third down and not give away scheme or if he can be effective as a blocker and a runner. So tight end, I think, would be one position that they might look at. The other, to me, is linebacker. Now, I know we've heard the linebacker room has improved, but I think if you could go out and get you a proven guy out of the portal, that would be my second position. Then, of course, the third to me would be running back. I know they got Cromah coming in, but I wasn't wowed by what I saw by Roydell or Cam in that scrimmage that we did get to see. Roydell, I think, is more of a true north-south runner, not a lot of change of direction. I think he's going to, can he get the tough yard? Can he the best running back we saw last year, Bob, was the kid from North Carolina, Omarion Hampton. I didn't see an Omarion Hampton on Florida State's roster this spring. Cam still struggles to find the hole at times. Now, I heard Mike talk about Keziah and Roydell after the goal line scrimmage. And then the other one, hey, listen, and then to cover all your bases, if there's a player that ends up in the portal by surprise and warrants at any position, you go get him, right, if the player is good enough. But, so that would be those would be my three: tight end, linebacker, then running back. And Trenton roster is full of Jags. And if you know what that means, that's just another – it means Jags means just another guy. It's a football term that's been used for years. I can't remember the first time I heard it, but when you watch a lot of recruiting tape, if a coach is if you got one coach that's on is getting on the table for a guy, the guy that doesn't like him might just say, hey, he's just another guy, let's move on, that kind of thing. So so that would be my three positions in one special circumstance to bring in a portal position guys or additional portal players. I'm trying to think who would be the guy on offense that you could not afford to lose after the spring practice. We haven't. I think all those guys, Bob, that I would pick are new portal guys that have transferred in this offseason.
Right.
And so I guess I would say Castellanos or Hansen. I mean, Hansen's supposed to be your left tackle. That's who we're projecting to be the left tackle. So to me, who would the Nico of this offensive roster be? It would be either Castellanos or Hansen. Even though none of those kids have played a snap for Florida State yet. On defense, to me, it'd be Daryl Jackson.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I won't get descriptive here, but when I saw Deuce Robinson clearly injured at a Florida State softball game a few weeks back, I had a momentary pause of, oh my. Now, it's not as bad as it looked. Okay, so it's April. Let's not jump to conclusions. But I think that was the guy that I thought, that's a difference maker. I mean, at a position that didn't really have difference makers, because once Jalen Lucas went down, it was Lawrence Toafili and Ja'Kai Douglas trying to kind of rescue things in a passing game that wasn't at all efficient. I'm kind of with you. I mean, Daryl Jackson is the big guy that you might worry about from a tampering standpoint, that another school might come out there and just they want a Daryl Jackson. But let's be honest, why weren't a lot of spring football games televised on Saturday around the country? It's because of a discussion we're having now about the potential of tampering of rosters, that coaches are looking for options. They know what the roster looks like. I think as long as Florida State doesn't have significant injuries to a lot of these new pieces, I feel okay about where things stand going in the summer.
Yeah, and listen, these kids, as someone told me, they're all looking all the time. And I'm not saying about the Florida, he's talking about football players in general. And the one thing I will say about the reason, I know a lot of coaches are saying we're not going to play a spring game, and they're saying the portal and NIL is part of it. But this with Nico, this has been going on since January or December. The more research I do on it, he's clearly this contract negotiation has extended out until through obviously the month of April. So, listen, for the known commodities, I don't think it really matters if you play a spring game or not. And Nico is known. He started every game for Tennessee last year, led him to a college football playoff berth. Could a third-team receiver get picked over because of what he did in the spring game? Yes, I guess. But I think these coaches on opposing teams already know what players they're looking at from other teams, regardless of the spring game. Listen, I think that one of the reasons you don't have a spring game is because you don't want anybody to know that the quarterback battle is as close as it. When you're spending I've been told, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I've been told one of the reasons that Florida State did not have a spring game last year was, and they do the showcase, is because they didn't want anybody to think that DJU was not clearly the starting quarterback for Florida State after spending, I don't know, I've heard $800,000. I don't know if that's true or not. I just know what I've heard. But I've heard that was maybe done. They choose to go to the showcase, A, because they won't anybody to get injured, but B, because there's no doubt that there's who the starting quarterback is. There's no could you imagine if DJU had gone that spring game last year and struggled, and Luke or Brock show out, and Luke or Brock were held out of that scrimmage, and up until that point, I did not even know that either one of them had been injured. Now, I wasn't here for the spring showcase. I was in Atlanta at a Rivals camp. But anyway, I think there's some positioning going on or spinning why they're not having the spring games. But listen, maybe an unknown player gets picked up or gets noticed in a spring game. But the known kids, like Nico, has enough video evidence from last year that people are going to want him if they hear he's available. So I don't think a spring game would have impacted that. So I think it's a nuanced conversation and a little bit definitive on who we're talking about. Is it a known guy? Is it an unknown guy that actually just kind of showed out in spring and then shows out in the spring game? So, but yeah, so no spring game for a lot of people. And listen, I've seen some pictures of some of these spring games around the country, Bob. And nobody's going to spring football games anyway anymore. And I think a large part of that is people have gotten a little bit frustrated with what's going on with college football right now. And it's I've listened to a bunch of these conversations the last couple of days, and this is the situation at Tennessee. It's not Tennessee's fault. It's not Nico's fault. This is something that's created by a system that has no guardrails or rules, and we're going to continue to see it happen. And I think it's going to be very interesting. I remember last year, Josh Pate was talking about how the last spring portal was going to be the Armageddon of college football. There's been none of that prognostication by anybody for this portal cycle. We might just get a little bit of it, and Nico certainly started it. And listen, I saw a linebacker that transferred out of Nebraska to Missouri is going to enter the portal again from Missouri. He's been there 4 months. Will we see some of that at Florida State and around the country? So I think it's fascinating time. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens. How many of these guys want to leverage for better deals other places. I'm not talking about just Florida State. I'm talking about around the sport. But this is definitely. But the spring game, I saw the picture of Oklahoma spring game and Alabama spring game. Alabama was about half filled compared to what it was last year. I can remember talking to somebody the other day about, Florida State's getting a visit out of Landon Duckworth. I was like, that's good news for Florida State. That means they might have a chance to knock off one of those SEC schools. I don't think it's going to happen, but this person's response, well, even if they get the official visit, which is great, even if they sign him, which would be greater, where is he when he's a redshirt freshman? Where is he when he's a redshirt sophomore?
Contract. This is why we need multi-year contracts on a lot of these deals moving forward. I'm not going to go down the road of they should be employees. That's a discussion for politicians at another date. But we do need multi-year deals to keep some type of roster management in check.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what's going on in Alabama. Is that because they had a disappointing year and they weren't a national contender? And by the end of the year, I mean, even though there were several people making arguments that they could have been in the playoff with 3 losses, but Oklahoma, they had a down year. Is that the result of it? I don't remember what Florida State brought in for the showcase last year, Bob. What was it? Half the stadium?
And it was remodeled at that point. I mean, there was limited seating. I think it was probably in the 20 to 25,000 range last spring.
Yeah. But so, I think there's a lot going on right now. And I think that college football fans used to know who was going to be on their team typically for the entirety of their careers. You might get a kid or 2 transferring when they had to sit out a year if they transferred. So I think some of that, I think it's a little bit of, I think there's a little bit of college football fatigue going on right now with everything that's happening with the sport. I think people are a little bit more cynical. I know I'm more cynical when it comes to all of this. And, I think that, as I said, Jerry and I were speaking to a group the other day, and, they asked us about the portal and, what are kids paying attention to? And my response was, the better the prospect you are and the deeper into the pool that you are in, I mean, with the big boys competing for these top tier kids, I do think that it certainly does have something to do with the relationship. But I think more and more for those top end kids, it is going into a business transaction that, listen, you're always going to do business with people you like, right? So you could like 5 schools the same. Like, there are a lot of kids that have a hard time making a decision where they're going to go to school. But I do think that I think the deeper end of the pool that you're recruiting in, I think the more business transaction it is. And I think as you get back to the middle tier prospects, then it's more traditional recruiting like it's been in the past. But interesting times in college football. I do want to go back to Friday's practice and what we heard. Obviously they did a scrimmage on Friday, Bob. It was a red zone short practice. I don't know, practice scrimmage, whatever you want to call it. They were 11 on 11. Mike seemed very pleased, said it was a good day, was very happy with the physicality and toughness of the kids, both offensively and defensively, and was very happy with the way they responded in back-to-back practices, which does not happen a lot. Mentioned they thought defense won the game, won the goal line part of the practice. And, listen, we don't know whether that's just the one and put the ball in the 1 or 2, or is that 20 going in type of thing, just red zone. Quarterbacks were not live, which probably hurt the offense a little bit, particularly with those quarterbacks in the run game. But what were some of your takeaways from what Mike had to say post-practice on Friday?
Yeah, like you said, I think he liked the mindset, the approach to physicality, toughness. I think he appreciated that on back-to-back days, Florida State brought it, especially after that Tuesday disappointment, where they were lacking the edge, in his words. Again, we talked about Keziah earlier. Good to hear Keziah Holmes' name because, we think Keziah is probably higher than that number 3 or number 4 on the running back depth chart. That's a guy who can, give Florida State more potentially in those kind of short yardage. Can he be better in the red zone? Florida State needs to be better, more efficient at getting touchdowns and not settling for field goals in the red zone. I think you're looking at some potentially bigger backs. Is Keziah that type of guy who can get you some tough yardage, when the real estate's pretty narrow? I think, the first question of Stephon Thompson was pretty good. Yeah. It was, hey, do you think the defense won the day? And of course, the linebacker is going to say the defense won the day. But I like that he said it was really competitive, that it was a good back and forth. That's what it's all about in the spring, is that competition.
Yeah, and I listen. I am listening more to what the players say than I have in the past, just because we don't have the same access. And, sometimes, you're going to get player speak just like you get coach speak sometimes, but sometimes you don't. And sometimes they're very honest and try to be genuine. And, what Stephen Thompson said, talking about that particular practice, everyone was juiced, having fun, taking it play by play. And that was not about the defense. That was about the entire team, right? I mean, he really bought into the fact that, he thought that the team finally started, his other comment was, everyone is growing, seeing that we can be a good team. And he was talking about offensively and defensively. There was no, excuse me, he wasn't talking about one side of the ball or the other. So I thought that was interesting comments to hear from him, because it does seem like maybe, even though you got a bunch of transfers in here, and I think that's just the new norm, I do think this, at least, and listen, we're not seeing it, which makes it harder to determine. But what we're hearing, this certainly seems to be more of a player-led team than last year's team. Now, again, we are hearing this. We're not seeing it. And so I think that's important to notate, just as it was important to notate last year that we got to see a lot of practices, but we didn't get to see him play tackle football. And that ultimately was the difference in our evaluation process from what we thought the team was going to do into what it actually did. But anyway, what were your thoughts on Stephen's comments on Friday?
Again, I think when we're thinking about transfers that Florida State brought in, we're not going to get to him very fast. We're going to be thinking about, the James Williams, the Tommy Castellanos, Deuce Robinson, all the other guys. I feel like what you get out of him on the field is a bonus. What you get from him as the instructor, as the teacher, is his real value, as far as, hey, this is what the 3-3-5 has looked like at Syracuse and Nebraska on its best day. It looks exactly like this. Guys, this is what we have to do. If you have a leader like that, and I think we've maybe focused more on the macro this spring, because when our eyes aren't there day to day, you got to focus on the accountability and the leadership and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I like guys like Thompson, because I think he's really key about alignment, making sure guys are doing their jobs. So I think this is, if his knee is right, if he's a guy who can bring it on a limited snap count, that's great. But what he gives you as a teacher is to me far more valuable.
Yeah. And listen, I think it's probably good that you got James Williams to help him back there up on the front line. And then you got Stephon behind him on the second line of the defense, who's able to help kids. And we've already heard one of the transfers talk about the fact that he'll go to James Williams before he goes to Terrence Knight. And speaking of James Williams, I don't know what's going on here. I just got a little whiff of it. Apparently, he has not been very kind in his comments about Nebraska on social media, and now Terrence Knighton has gotten involved, backing him up on social media. Listen, James, I agree with just about everything I've read. I don't know what exactly the details of this little rift are between Nebraska fans and James Williams, but listen, you were at a junior college. Nebraska put some faith in you. They brought you in. You should be appreciative of that and thankful for the opportunity that led to you getting here to Florida State. But yeah, I'm not sure what's going on that, but you don't see a lot of assistant coaches jump in the fray with a kid on social media. And so you got James Williams and Terrence Knighton going at it with the Nebraska fan base, apparently. And I just don't have time to get into it. I just happened to see it, but that was interesting. All right. So Kevin Sparrow, we got to talk to him. We've heard his name a ton of, just it seems like after every practice, Bob, we've heard Kevin Sparrow. We heard Stephon Thompson. I'm sure Kevin was over in the background getting ready to come on stage, but we heard Stephon talk very impressively of Kevin. Everyone that spoke about him, coaches, other players, has been very impressed with him. I thought he handled himself pretty well in front of you guys on Friday. What were some of your takeaways from what Kevin had to say?
I think he's very comfortable in who he is as far as, being a quarterback, having played at multiple high schools. Now he's at yet another new place, trying to make a first impression. And the first impression is this guy can move really, really well. I mean, all these quarterbacks, it seems awkward to talk about their athleticism, maybe first ahead of their passing skills. I don't mean that to be derogatory in any way, but I mean, just these guys can move, can elude danger and pressure. And like you said earlier too, Pat, like if you take the green jerseys off some of these quarterbacks, what would a lot of play calls look like if they can truly run, if they can run a Gus Malzahn offense? What is 3rd and 2, 4th and 1? What does goal line look like? I'd have a lot of desire to see some kind of film tape or in person with a guy like Kevin Sparrow. I'll also say this, though. This doesn't feel like a guy who's going to play a ton in 2025.
No.
Should not play a ton in 2025. Yeah. But with the redshirt rule, get him out there a couple games. You've got Kent State on the schedule. You've got Texas A&M Commerce out there. Give him some reps. Let him feel good about what he can show you. But there's no way he's going to be playing a ton out there in August, September, October, short of there was an injury ahead of him on the depth chart.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, I think it'd be for him to play, it would have to be an injury to one of the two guys in front of him, either Tommy Castellanos or Brock Glenn, unless Castellanos can't get the turnover thing figured out. Then I think you could see them make a change where they. I mean, listen, there's a lot riding on this season for Mike Norvell. You might have to go all in at some point and listen, there's nothing. We did not see Castellanos turn the ball over the other day in that scrimmage, so we're just sitting here talking. But yeah, I would think you would like to get him some game action. I would also think you'd like to reserve a year of his eligibility and not burn it if you don't have to, particularly if you're having adequate success with either Tommy or Brock, and hopefully they can do that with either one of those two kids. Simply because of the improvement around them at offensive line and with Deuce Robinson and Squirrel White at receiver. So I think that's going to be interesting. Now, he did say that he gets frustrated with being live, the quarterback's not being live, because he gets upset with the early whistle. And we've heard Castellanos talk about that and react to it during the scrimmage when we saw him. Like he thought he had somebody beat, and Mike blows that whistle. He turns around and has a discussion with Mike about it. So it sounds like Kevin's had some interest, some similar conversations. One of the things I think that, and since we're talking about portal and talking about an early enrollee at quarterback, I thought one of his more important comments was he feels his experience this spring has validated his decision to sign with Florida State. And quarterback is one of those where you lose a guy or two, you're in dire straits from a depth standpoint. So I think it's very good that, he came here early, enjoyed the experience, feel like he made the right decision. Also talked about Tommy Castellanos. brings maturity, leadership to the offense, communicates with every position group. I thought that was something I was glad to hear. He talked about him communicating with receivers, the offensive line, because I know we talked several times last year about how quiet the practice field was, particularly at the quarterback position last year, when you did not see a lot of communication going on between the quarterback and the rest of the offense outside of the huddle, right? I mean, you just didn't see a lot of one-on-one conversations on the sideline going over, hey, this is how I want you to run this route or that. I mean, maybe it happened, but we've heard that time and time again about Castellanos and his ability to lead. So, again, since we can't visually validate things because we're not at practice, we are trying to validate things that we hear again and again and again, or hearing the same thing again and again serves as our source of validation right now. So anyway, but Kevin certainly been more impressive than what I thought he would be as an early enrollee freshman, and certainly a guy that we didn't know much about before Florida State got involved with him after Malzahn took the job as offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin continues to maybe surprise us in some regards because, again, he came out of nowhere, when Tramel Jones decommits, and then you kind of wonder, where's Florida State going to go from there? And then all of a sudden, it's this old relationship with this guy, Kevin Sperry, and Kevin comes in the mix. The more you kind of watch his huddle film, you can kind of look at how he fits in this Gus Malzahn offense a lot. It was almost like Mike Norvell was looking at that big picture when Tramel made his decision, and he kind of saw, okay, Kevin Sperry fits. Gus Malzahn is that kind of coordinator who can bring out Kevin's skill set. I think if we're looking long-term, if we're looking at player development, quarterback development, this is a great move for 2026 and beyond. And I want to see Kevin out there a little bit, but like you said, don't burn that red shirt on him, preserve it and help his development.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, I'm glad they're fired up about him. I know there are a lot of people in the fan base that would like to see this staff develop a quarterback that they bring in from a high school recruit, as opposed to always consistently going into the portal to try to figure this thing out like they have the last 2 years. I'm not sure that it matters at the end of the day, as long as you win. Listen, we'll find out if teams that use the portal a bunch, can they consistently win or not? That's I don't think there's enough number of years gone by to figure that out. But Kevin certainly has got everybody fired up. It sounds like that on his teammates and coaches alike. All right, so we've covered a little bit more football than I thought we would on a short day, Bob. It's supposed to be a short day, so we're going to wrap it up pretty quickly. We did not get to see, I think that there's only one baseball game that was aired at Virginia Tech this weekend, but Florida State did sweep the Hokies in what was an important series, the rebound from 2 losses to Wake Forest and 2 losses to Wake Forest, and they lost to Florida last week midweek. So you got a little momentum heading into Tuesday's game versus USF. I think it's here at Dick Hauser, and then of course you bring in one of the top teams in the country, or what was highly ranked preseason anyway, Virginia. So what did you learn about the baseball team this weekend, Bob?
I think the big takeaway to me was just the starting pitching does its job, and it makes life so much easier on the bullpen. The bats do what they do, and you win. I won't say 3 games comfortably, because that's not fair, but you win 3 games on the road, a sweep. Of course, it hasn't swept a conference team since Miami in 2021. This is pretty. I think the other one is like, we had seen some bad starts from Wes Mendes, but he put it together enough on Sunday. It did not look textbook. A lot of walks, danger on the bases early, stranded the bases loaded in the first. There was the error in the second. He was always kind of battling, but you like to see young pitchers battle and fight through it. So I thought it was a good weekend overall for Florida State on the mound. I think the way Florida State plays, the losses have looked so concerning that it's jarring. But when they put together a weekend like that, we also have to acknowledge this is going to be the nature of a college baseball team. It's going to be up and down at times, but the resume is pretty darn good overall. It's 28-7. South Florida next, Virginia next. We'll see how it all plays out. But the ball game is put yourself in position to win these weekend series. Put yourself in position to be hosting a regional, and they're definitely down that road.
Yeah. Yeah, well, listen, I'm glad they got it back going the right way, because this team had been a lot of fun to watch until Wake Forest came to town. And listen, even the game against Florida was a fun game to watch. They just didn't turn out in Florida State's favor. I mean, that's going to happen sometimes in baseball. All right, so they got 4 games this week. They'll have played Saturday 2, Sunday 1, Tuesday. So 4 games in 4 days, and then get a couple of days off, and then go back to 3 days. So it's going to be about 7 games in 8 days. So a lot of baseball being played right now. Should be a great weekend at Dick Hauser Stadium for that. Basketball, listen, there seems to be, we don't give it enough attention, I don't think, but they have brought in another junior college standout in Isaac Garrett. I believe he is down to a couple teams, Florida State being one of them. Am I right about that?
He's going to announce Tuesday. Yes.
Okay. All right. So Bob's got a great article on everything that's happened in Luke Lauk's first month as basketball coach. You can go to theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com. That is premium content, so you will have to be a subscriber to the Osceola, but it is a neat look at what he has done since he hit the tarmac in Tallahassee on March 9th. I believe it was. So he's been here a little bit over a month. He's got 5 assistants hired, I believe, now at this point, and obviously has brought in at least 3 kids. Actually 4 now, right? With Steen.
I think he's up to 5 transfers. We'll see what happens with Isaac Garrett. They've got schedules. They have visits scheduled. I should say Kurt Weiler's also got the transfer portal tracker going on the Osceola Village. So check that out. A couple guys coming in the next few days.
Yeah, and Thomas Bosong was added over the weekend, I guess, or right before, or I guess right before the weekend started, right? Because this was a Saturday article. So, all right. Well, Bob, anything else outliers that we need to talk about? Anything else going on with any of the other sports, golf, softball?
Yeah, I mean, we'll do
stadium updates.
Yeah, we'll do some quick jambalaya. How about that? We'll just kind of go around the bases real quick. Softball, last home regular season series will be against Georgia Tech Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You want to check them out. Of course, they're in position to host a regional, so not the last game in Tallahassee, but you'll want to check them out if you can. Women's basketball, you might want to check out the WNBA draft tonight. Michaela Timpson projected as a 2nd-round pick. I've also got a story with Soleil Williams, a Texas A&M transfer. As you've been following women's basketball, it's going to be a massive turnover with Timpson gone, Amaria Gordon gone. Tanaya Latson has transferred to South Carolina. So it's going to be a ton of new faces for that women's basketball team. We're going to be tracking, kind of introducing you to some of those new faces. So we'll have a lot of stories on women's basketball too in the coming days.
Yeah, I was disappointed to see Latson go to South Carolina. The rich get richer. Rich get richer.
She's got friends on that roster, but yes, the rich do get richer.
Yeah. Well, that was disappointing. Well, listen, it's going to be another great week. Florida State's got football practice on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, right? It's back to Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So obviously we will have post-practice coverage on the Osceola on Tuesday, early evening. You can start seeing our practice updates and video from Mike Norvell and which of the players practice. Obviously, we will be back on Wednesday with another Osceola Seminole Sidelines practice report. We'll also have updates on what's going on with the FSU baseball game with USF on Tuesday. Not updates, we'll have a report on how that played out. Nick will be with us on Wednesday to do a little bit more broad-based recruiting talk, because we do think there'll be more kids on campus Tuesday than they were last Thursday and Friday combined, likely. So we'll have that. But please join us on Wednesday at 3 p.m. here on the Osceola YouTube channel, wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on the Osceola YouTube channel, please take a second to subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the notification button so that you get alerts to when we're doing these, either live or taped live and run later, which we do from time to time. And also, we'd love for you to go to theosceola.com, check out our practice reports, all our weekend articles of the baseball team. We got some recruiting. I know Nick's got an article on one of the preferred walk-ons for next year's football team, who's a dual threat quarterback who was one of the best players in the state of Georgia last year. Gavin Marquis, I believe is his name, if I'm not mistaken. But interesting read there. So you can go to theosceola.com or FloridaState.rivals.com. But we appreciate you joining us, and we will be back on Wednesday to talk more Florida State sports, and might even get to a little bit of the Masters. I don't know. I don't want to start that now, but that was a hell of a weekend in Augusta, and what a Sunday finish. And Rory McIlroy outlast Justin Rose, and of course I'm a big golf guy and love golf, and so that was fun to watch. But anyway, unfortunately none of the Florida State guys came through. Brooks struggled. Daniel Berger actually was doing well in the early rounds, just couldn't get it going. But all right, Bob. Well, Bob, appreciate you joining us, and we will see everybody on Wednesday.